"If you protect my son, I'll be yours forever," she said. The cowboy's response shocked everyone. The small town of Willow Creek was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's name, and secrets were hard to keep. The streets were quiet most days, lined with old wooden houses and small shops with faded signs. The air smelled faintly of hay and earth, and in the evenings the sky turned shades of pink and orange, reflecting off the windows of the little town. People often said it was peaceful, but for some, peace could be just an illusion. Martha Jensen had lived in Willow Creek all her life. She knew its corners, its whispers, and the dangers that lurked behind the calm. She had a small wooden house near the edge of town, where the fields met the forest. She lived there with her son Danny, who was 8 years old and full of energy. He loved running through the tall grass, chasing birds and climbing trees, but lately his laughter had become less frequent. Martha's worry for him had grown with every passing day. The trouble began slowly, as it often does. Strange men had started lingering near the school where Danny studied. At first, it was only looks, lingering glances that made Martha's skin crawl. Then her neighbors began noticing things too. Small acts of aggression, words whispered too loudly in Danny's presence, and the feeling that someone was always watching. Martha tried to tell herself it was nothing, that children sometimes misinterpret things, and people sometimes stare without reason. But deep inside she knew that the unease she felt was real. One evening, as the sun sank low behind the hills, casting long shadows across the fields, Martha sat on her porch, rocking Danny gently. He was restless that night, unable to sleep. "Mom, why do they keep staring at me?" he asked, his voice small and uncertain. Martha's heart ached. She had no easy answer. She had tried speaking with the school officials, but they assured her that everything was fine. She had tried talking to the men in question, but they laughed it off and walked away. The sense of danger, however, did not leave. Martha's life had never been easy. She had lost her husband when Danny was just a baby, and since then, she had been raising him on her own. Every day was a struggle, filled with work at the local diner, keeping the house and making sure Danny felt safe. Yet she knew that no amount of work or love could completely shield him from the world. The thought of someone harming him filled her with terror. She often imagined waking up in the middle of the night to find him gone, taken by someone who saw him as vulnerable. The fear was relentless, pressing down on her chest like a heavy weight she could never set aside. It was during one of these restless nights that the idea came to her. She thought about the cowboy, as people in town called him, though no one really knew his real name. He was a quiet man, always calm, always alert, and he seemed to have a sense of justice about him. He lived alone, far enough from the town that people rarely saw him except when he passed through on horseback. The cowboy had a reputation for protecting those in need. Stories about him had been passed down for years, how he had once saved a group of children from a runaway horse, how he had stopped a thief who had been terrorizing a neighbor, and how he never asked for anything in return. To Martha, he seemed like a figure from a storybook, someone strong, brave, and honest in a world that often lacked those qualities. Martha had watched him from a distance many times, wondering if he would ever notice her struggles. She had never spoken to him beyond polite greetings when he passed through town. But that night, with Danny asleep in the next room, she made a decision. She had to reach out to him to ask for his help. It was not something she wanted to do. Pride and fear of judgment held her back, but the thought of Danny's safety pushed her forward. The next morning, she prepared herself as best she could. She chose a simple dress, combed her hair neatly, and walked toward the edge of town, where the cowboy often rested by the creek. Her heart pounded with each step. She rehearsed what she would say over and over in her mind, trying to find the right words, but every version seemed too weak, too fearful. Yet, she knew that if she didn't speak, nothing would change. When she reached the clearing by the creek, the cowboy was there, sitting on a fallen log, brushing dust from his boots. He looked up as she approached, his eyes calm and steady, assessing her without judgment. Martha swallowed hard and spoke, her voice trembling slightly.
"Excuse me, sir."
"I need your help, my son. He's in danger, and I don't know what else to do." The cowboy listened silently, nodding just enough to show he understood. His quiet presence made her feel slightly braver, and she continued. If you protect my son, I'll do anything, anything at all. I'll be yours forever. The words felt foreign as they left her lips, but she couldn't take them back. She had laid herself bare, revealing her deepest fear and her desperation. A hush fell over the clearing. For a moment it felt as though the world had stopped, holding its breath. Martha feared she had gone too far, that he would dismiss her, or worse, laugh. But the cowboy's expression did not change. He did not smile or frown. He simply looked at her with a kind of quiet seriousness that made her feel both nervous and relieved at the same time. Behind her, the town seemed to fade away. The creek babbled softly, birds chirped in the distance, and the wind rustled the leaves of the trees. In that moment, all that mattered was Danny and the promise she hoped the cowboy would make. Martha realized that this was not about pride or shame. This was about survival, about protecting the child she loved more than anything in the world. The cowboy finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. I hear you. I understand. But protecting someone is not something you bargain for. It's not a trade. It's a responsibility. His words struck Martha like a wave. She had expected a different response, one that would accept her offer immediately. But instead he spoke of honor and duty, values that Martha had only seen in stories. For a moment she felt a mix of fear and admiration. This man, a stranger in many ways, was holding her to a standard higher than she had imagined. She realized that his refusal to accept her offer was not rejection, it was integrity. He would help Danny because it was the right thing to do, not because he was promised anything in return. The weight of her desperation lifted slightly, replaced by a cautious hope. As she walked back home that evening, Martha thought about the cowboy's words over and over. She realized that asking for help did not make her weak, it made her human. And perhaps, just perhaps, there were people in the world who would do the right thing simply because it was right, not because they were paid or promised reward. For the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of relief. Danny's laughter returned slightly, filling the house with its warm sound, and she promised herself that she would do everything she could to keep that hope alive. The next morning, Martha woke up to the soft sunlight streaming through the thin curtains of her small bedroom. Danny was already awake, his small feet pattering across the wooden floor as he got ready for school. Martha tried to push away the nervousness that had taken hold of her the night before. She knew she had done the right thing by speaking to the cowboy, but she also knew that danger did not disappear simply because someone promised to help. The threat to Danny was still very real, and the unknown weighed heavily on her. Martha prepared breakfast quietly, trying to act normal for Danny's sake. She served him pancakes and eggs, though her mind wandered constantly to the cowboy and what he had said. She wondered how he would respond to the situation now that he knew about Danny's danger. Would he truly step in, or would he wait until the threat became unavoidable? The thought made her stomach churn, but she reminded herself to stay hopeful. After breakfast, she walked Danny to school, keeping a careful watch on the streets and the people around them. She noticed the same men she had seen before, lingering near the schoolyard, their eyes sharp and calculating. Fear gripped her chest. She quickened her pace, holding Danny's hand tightly, making sure he did not notice her trembling. The town had always seemed safe to outsiders, but Martha knew its hidden shadows. She had learned to read the faces of strangers, the way they moved, and the quiet signals that indicated trouble. When she reached the school gate, she saw the principal, Mr. Caldwell, standing with a concerned expression. "Martha," he said quietly, "we've noticed some of the same men you mentioned. We're trying to handle it, but it's complicated. They haven't broken any laws yet." Martha nodded, her jaw tight. She understood what he meant. The law could not always protect children from danger that was subtle, slow, and deliberate. "Thank you," she said, forcing a smile. "I just want Danny to be safe." As the day passed, Martha could not focus on her work at the diner. Every time she wiped a table or took an order, her mind wandered to Danny, imagining him walking home from school, imagining the men who had been watching him. She thought of the cowboy again. wishing she could see him, tell him exactly what had been happening, and hope that he would act quickly. But she had to wait, and waiting was one of the hardest things she had ever done. By late afternoon, she decided she could not wait any longer. She had to see him again, even if it meant walking the long path to the edge of town, where he often stayed by the creek. She told herself that she needed guidance, not just protection for Danny. She needed to know what to do if the threat escalated before help arrived. Taking a deep breath, she gathered her courage and left the diner, walking briskly through the quiet streets. The creek was just as she remembered it. The water moved gently, reflecting the sky, and the tall grass swayed in the breeze. The cowboy was there again, sitting on his log as if he had been expecting her. His calm presence was comforting, but Martha could still feel her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm back," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I need your advice. I don't know what to do if they come closer to Danny. I don't want to be helpless." The cowboy looked at her carefully, his eyes calm but focused. "You're not helpless," he said. "But you cannot face this alone. That's why you came here, right?" Martha nodded. "Yes. I don't know who to trust anymore. Everyone says they'll help, but it feels like no one really can." The cowboy's gaze softened slightly. "Then we will make a plan," he said. "We will protect him together. But you must be honest with me. Every detail, every observation. Nothing is too small. The more I know, the better I can act." Martha spent the next hour describing everything she had noticed: the men's faces, the times they appeared, the way they lingered near the school and playground. She spoke quickly, as if pouring out all the fear she had held inside for weeks. The cowboy listened silently, nodding occasionally, never interrupting. His calm demeanor helped Martha focus, and for the first time in a long while, she felt like someone was taking her seriously. She was not overreacting. She was not alone. When she finished, the cowboy stood and stretched, brushing dust from his coat. "Thank you for telling me everything," he said. "This helps more than you know. I can't promise what will happen tomorrow, but I can promise that I will be here if trouble comes. And we will be ready." Martha felt a flicker of hope ignite in her chest. The fear that had weighed so heavily now felt lighter, tempered by the knowledge that someone capable and trustworthy was on her side. That evening, Martha prepared dinner with a sense of purpose. She knew the days ahead could be dangerous, but for the first time she felt that there was a chance Danny could be safe. After putting him to bed, she sat on the porch, looking out at the fields and the sky that had begun to darken. She thought about the cowboy, about his promise, and about the courage it would take for both of them to face what was coming. The next day, as she walked Danny to school, she noticed subtle changes in the town. People whispered in the streets, casting curious glances toward her. She realized that the town had sensed something as well, that the air was shifting, that the quiet peace was breaking. She held Danny's hand a little tighter, determined not to show fear. She had already explained to him, in the simplest words, that he must stay close to her, and that he must tell her immediately if anyone made him feel uncomfortable. Danny nodded solemnly, understanding enough to follow her instructions, though his youthful energy had not dimmed entirely. During that day, Martha observed the men carefully. They lingered near the school just as before, but there was a subtle change in their behavior. They seemed cautious, hesitant, as if they sensed someone was watching them. Martha felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. She knew it was not luck. It was because the cowboy had already made his presence known, even if only indirectly. The thought made her heart swell with gratitude, but also reminded her that this was only the beginning. That evening, Martha walked toward the creek again, unable to stop thinking about what she needed to do next. The cowboy was waiting, as if he had never left. He listened as she recounted the day's observations, offering advice quietly, teaching her how to notice details and signals she might otherwise miss. He spoke gently but firmly, explaining that vigilance and awareness could sometimes prevent danger before it arrived. Martha absorbed every word, realizing that she was learning skills that could keep Danny safe, even when she was alone. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Martha felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time she did not feel powerless. She had a plan, a trusted ally, and the knowledge that she could act if needed. The bond between her and the cowboy grew quietly, built on trust, respect, and the shared goal of protecting a child from harm. That night, Martha sat by Danny's bed and watched him sleep. She whispered a prayer of thanks for the help they had found and for the courage she was beginning to feel within herself. She knew challenges awaited, but she also knew that together, with care, vigilance, and integrity, they could face them. And in that moment, the fear that had haunted her for weeks began to ease, replaced by a cautious hope that perhaps, just perhaps, Danny would be safe, and the future might hold something better for them both. The days that followed were tense, filled with careful observation, whispered conversations, and constant vigilance. Martha could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders more than ever. She had always tried to be strong for Danny, but now, with the threat looming closer, she realized that strength alone was not enough. She needed guidance, strategy, and above all, someone who could act decisively if danger arrived. The cowboy had promised to help, but even with him by her side, Martha knew she could not relax. Each morning she walked Danny to school, watching the streets and noting any unusual behavior. The men who had caused her concern were still there, though they appeared more cautious. It was clear they had noticed that someone was watching them. Martha felt a mix of relief and unease. Relief because she knew they were aware of being observed. Unease because it meant they could change tactics, become more careful, or even more dangerous. After dropping Danny off, she went about her work at the diner, though she struggled to focus. The simple tasks of serving coffee and cleaning tables felt mechanical, her mind always drifting to the safety of her son. She found herself glancing at the clock constantly, worrying about the time Danny spent outside her sight. Her colleagues noticed her distraction, offering kind words of support, but Martha smiled politely and said she was fine. She could not explain fully, even to them, the level of fear that consumed her. By late afternoon, she decided she could no longer wait for something to happen. She needed to prepare, to learn, and to plan alongside the cowboy. She left the diner earlier than usual and walked the familiar path to the edge of town where he often stayed. The creek had become a place of refuge for her, a place where she could speak freely, learn, and prepare for what might come. When she arrived, the cowboy was already there, standing by the water's edge, his eyes scanning the surrounding trees. His presence was steadying, a reminder that she was not entirely alone in facing the threat. "I observed the men today," she began. "They're watching, but they're careful. They haven't done anything illegal yet, but I can feel that it's only a matter of time before they try something more aggressive." The cowboy nodded slowly. "You're right," he said. "When people feel threatened or challenged, they often wait and plan. That makes them more dangerous. We must be prepared for every possibility." He guided her to a small clearing near the creek where they could speak privately and practice strategies without being seen.
"Awareness and preparation are our first weapons," he explained.
"We can prevent harm if we notice things early and act wisely." For hours they went over scenarios. Martha learned how to recognize subtle signs of aggression, body language, tone of voice, and patterns of movement. The cowboy taught her simple methods of keeping safe while remaining calm, and how to communicate with Danny without alarming him unnecessarily. He explained that sometimes the best protection was not physical force but knowledge and vigilance. Martha listened intently, absorbing every detail. She realized that the cowboy's methods were practical, grounded in observation and calm reasoning, rather than confrontation. This approach gave her a sense of empowerment she had never felt before. She was learning to be alert without panicking, to anticipate danger without becoming paralyzed by fear. For the first time, she felt like she had some control over the situation. As the sun began to lower in the sky, the cowboy spoke about the importance of community. "We can't do this alone forever," he said. "Sometimes help comes from others who care, even if they don't know the full story. We must be cautious but not afraid to reach out when needed." Martha nodded, understanding the balance he described. She had often felt isolated, believing that she had to face the world alone. Now she saw that careful collaboration could make a significant difference in keeping Danny safe. That evening, As Martha returned home, she noticed subtle changes in her neighborhood. Neighbors who had previously ignored her concerns now cast small, curious glances in her direction. Martha realized that the town was beginning to sense the tension, even if they did not know the details. She felt a mixture of anxiety and reassurance. Anxiety because she understood that the awareness of others could provoke unexpected reactions from those who threatened Danny, and reassurance because the community could also serve as a layer of protection. When she reached home, Danny was already waiting for her. "Mom, why are the men looking at us again?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity and worry. Martha knelt down beside him, holding his hands gently. "They're just strangers who don't always understand how to behave," she explained carefully. "But we have people who care about us and are making sure we're safe. You don't need to worry." Danny nodded, trusting her words, though his small brow furrowed slightly in thought. Martha hugged him, feeling the deep bond between them, and silently promised herself that she would do everything possible to keep that promise alive. That night, she walked back to the creek one last time before dark. The cowboy was waiting, as if he had known she would come. The sky was painted with the deep purples and blues of evening, and the water reflected the fading light. "Tonight," he said calmly, "we focus on anticipation. We cannot fight shadows, but we can recognize them before they strike. Tomorrow we'll start practicing what to do if those shadows get too close." Martha felt a mixture of fear and determination. She knew the danger was real, yet she also knew she was learning to face it with courage and intelligence. The cowboy's presence was a steady anchor, and the strategies he taught gave her confidence. She began to understand that fear could be managed, that preparation and awareness could reduce risk, and that she could be strong for Danny without pretending to be invulnerable. For the next few days, the routine became more structured. Martha walked Danny to school, observing every movement and interaction. She kept detailed notes in a small notebook, recording patterns and details that might prove useful. After school, she met the cowboy at the creek, where they practiced communication signals, safe routes, and methods to remain calm under pressure. Each day, her confidence grew, and so did her sense of connection with the cowboy. Not romantic, but based on trust, respect, and a shared goal of protecting a child. One afternoon, as they observed the town together, the cowboy noticed something unusual. "They are testing boundaries," he said quietly. "Notice how they linger longer near the edges of the street, but avoid direct contact. That tells us they are calculating, not careless. We must remain alert and ready, but patient." Martha nodded, recognizing the truth in his words. Patience had never been easy for her, but now she saw its importance. Acting too soon or out of fear could provoke the very danger they sought to avoid. Evenings were spent reviewing the day, preparing for possible scenarios, and building quiet routines that would help Martha and Danny stay safe without feeling trapped. The cowboy emphasized the importance of normalcy. Danny still needed to play, laugh, and be a child, even under threat. Martha realized that protecting him did not mean isolating him completely. It meant teaching vigilance, creating safe spaces, and ensuring he felt secure even when the world seemed uncertain. By the end of the week, Martha noticed a subtle change in herself. The fear that had once dominated her thoughts was now tempered by confidence and clarity. She could read situations more clearly, anticipate potential danger, and act calmly rather than react impulsively. She had learned that strength was not just physical but mental and emotional, a combination of awareness, preparation, and courage. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery shades of orange and red, Martha reflected on everything that had happened. She realized that the days of helplessness were ending, replaced by a growing sense of agency. She had an ally in the cowboy, a plan to protect Danny, and a new understanding of courage and responsibility. She knew challenges still lay ahead, but for the first time in weeks, she felt ready to face them head-on. As she returned home, Danny greeted her with a smile and a small drawing he had made of the two of them in a field, hand in hand. Martha hugged him tightly, feeling a mixture of love, determination, and hope. She knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was no longer alone, and she had learned that vigilance, courage, and careful planning could make even the darkest days manageable. The tension in Willow Creek had reached a point where it was almost tangible. Martha could feel it in the way people moved, in the quiet conversations that seemed to pause whenever she passed by. Every morning she walked Danny to school, her eyes scanning every face, every shadow, every movement. She had grown adept at noticing the small signs the cowboy had taught her to see. A hand lingering too long near a pocket, a glance that lingered too long, or a hesitation in step that spoke of caution masking intent. Each observation reminded her that danger was never far, even when it hid behind calm expressions. That morning, as the sun rose slowly over the town, Martha noticed that the men she had been worried about were unusually still. They lingered at a distance, whispering among themselves, but their eyes flicked toward her and Danny more frequently than before. Martha's heart tightened. She could feel the sense of planning, the careful calculation in their movements. It was exactly what the cowboy had warned her about. When someone felt observed, they would wait, watch, and choose the moment to act. And that moment could be dangerous. After dropping Danny at school, Martha could not concentrate on her work at the diner. Her mind was occupied with plans, strategies, and the knowledge that the men were likely waiting for an opportunity to test boundaries. She decided she could not wait any longer. She needed to meet with the cowboy immediately, to discuss what she had seen and prepare for any possible confrontation. Leaving her apron on the counter, she walked swiftly toward the edge of town, the path through the fields familiar but never fully comforting. The creek was calm, as it usually was, reflecting the sky in soft shades of blue and silver. The cowboy was there, sitting on the log where they had spent so many afternoons. He looked up as she approached, his eyes sharp and alert, scanning the surroundings as if he had already anticipated her arrival.
"I saw them," Martha said quickly, breathless from the walk. "They're watching more closely now."
They're planning something, I can feel it. I think they'll try to confront Danny if they get a chance.
The cowboy stood slowly, his movements deliberate.
Good observation, he said quietly. You're right. They are testing boundaries. This is the moment we've been preparing for. Now we need to act, but carefully. Impulsive action could make things worse. Calm, decisive action will protect Danny and prevent unnecessary harm. Martha felt a mixture of fear and relief. Finally, the moment was coming when preparation would meet reality. She had been anxious for weeks, but now the steps were clear. Awareness, strategy, and action. They spent the next hour walking through potential scenarios, practicing what to do if the men approached Danny directly. The cowboy taught Martha how to stay calm, use her voice effectively, and move with purpose rather than panic. He reminded her that the key was to maintain control over the situation, to guide it without creating unnecessary conflict. People who plan to intimidate rely on fear, he explained. If we do not show fear, we take away their power. Confidence and calm can be stronger than force. Martha nodded, feeling the wisdom in his words. She realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. By late afternoon, they had agreed on a plan. Martha would continue her normal routine, walking Danny to school and keeping notes of anything unusual. The cowboy would position himself discreetly near the school and the surrounding streets, ready to intervene if necessary. They had identified safe routes for Danny, areas where other townspeople could provide support, and methods of communication that would alert the cowboy immediately if danger appeared. Everything had been prepared, every detail considered. As Martha walked Danny home that evening, she felt a sense of anticipation. Danny skipped ahead, oblivious to the tension that had settled over the town, and Martha reminded herself that she needed to remain calm in front of him. She wanted him to feel safe, not afraid, even as the threat grew closer. We're almost home, Danny, she said lightly, keeping her voice cheerful. Let's finish this walk and get ready for dinner. Danny nodded, smiling, and Martha felt a pang of both relief and urgency. She knew she could not let the danger take that innocence from him. When they reached the street near their home, Martha noticed the men were closer than usual, lingering near the corner, watching carefully. Her heart raced, but she reminded herself of the plan. She took Danny by the hand and walked quickly toward their house, keeping her posture calm and her eyes forward. She could feel the presence of the cowboy nearby, ready to act if needed. The men, sensing that someone was aware of them, hesitated and did not approach directly. Martha felt a flicker of hope. Preparation and vigilance had made a difference. Inside their home, Martha closed the door and locked it carefully. She turned to Danny and smiled, though her heart was still pounding. "We're safe here," she said. "Nothing is going to happen to you." Danny smiled back, trusting her words completely. She watched him for a moment, feeling the bond of love and responsibility more strongly than ever. Every step she had taken, every precaution she had learned, was for him. And now, the moment of truth was near. Later that night, the men attempted a subtle approach, testing the boundaries again. The cowboy, hidden and observing, moved silently, positioning himself so that he could intervene without causing panic. Martha noticed the slight change in movement outside, the way shadows shifted unnaturally, and she knew immediately what it meant. She whispered to Danny to stay calm and to wait inside, while she moved to a safe position near the window to observe. The cowboy was already taking action, moving strategically to ensure no harm would come to the boy. The confrontation, though tense, did not escalate into violence. The men realized that they were not dealing with an ordinary target and retreated after a brief attempt to intimidate from a distance. Martha watched, heart in her throat, as the cowboy's calm, decisive presence ensured safety without aggression. When the danger had passed, he returned quietly to the house, nodding to Martha in reassurance. "They won't try anything tonight," he said, "and they'll think twice before attempting again. We showed them that you are protected." Martha felt a wave of relief wash over her. For weeks, fear had dominated her life, but now she understood that courage, planning, and calm action could make a difference. Danny was safe, and she had a partner who could act decisively when needed. The trust she had placed in the cowboy had not been misplaced, and the lessons she had learned about vigilance, awareness, and calm were proving invaluable. That night, Martha stayed up later than usual, thinking about what had happened. She reflected on the weeks of preparation, the fears that had consumed her, and the growth she had experienced. She realized that strength was not about facing danger blindly, but about understanding it, planning for it, and acting wisely. The cowboy had shown her that courage and integrity could protect the vulnerable without unnecessary conflict. Danny, meanwhile, slept peacefully, unaware of the near threat that had passed outside. Martha watched him, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and determination. She knew challenges would continue to come, but she also knew that with careful planning, courage, and the support of someone she could trust, she could protect her son. She silently thanked the cowboy, knowing that his presence had made all the difference, and she promised herself that she would continue to learn, to observe, and to act when necessary. The days that followed were calmer, though Martha remained vigilant. The men in town had learned that she and Danny were not easy targets, and the cowboy continued to keep a watchful eye, ensuring their safety. Martha felt a growing sense of confidence, knowing that she had taken steps to protect her child, and that she could rely on the lessons she had learned. She continued to walk Danny to school, observe the streets, and practice the strategies taught by the cowboy, each day reinforcing her ability to stay calm and ready. Through it all, Martha's bond with the cowboy grew stronger, not in romance, but in mutual respect, trust, and shared purpose. She had come to rely on his guidance, learning from his calm, decisive approach, and in turn he had come to respect her courage, her intelligence, and her love for her son. Together they had faced the threat, and together they had ensured that Danny remained safe. As the sun set over Willow Creek, painting the sky in warm shades of pink and gold, Martha reflected on the events of the past weeks. Fear had once dominated her life, but now courage, planning, and trust had replaced it. She realized that the world was not always safe, but with vigilance, knowledge, and integrity, danger could be managed. And most importantly, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, Danny would be protected. The following days in Willow Creek brought a quiet relief that Martha had not felt in weeks. The tension that had once hung over her and Danny like a thick cloud seemed to lift, replaced by a calm she had almost forgotten was possible. Still, Martha remained cautious. She had learned that vigilance was not about fear, but about awareness and preparation. She walked Danny to school each morning with a sense of purpose, teaching him how to notice his surroundings, to be polite but careful, and to always trust his instincts. It was a subtle education, one he understood well for his age, and it made Martha feel that she was equipping him with the tools to navigate the world safely. Danny, for his part, seemed happier than he had been in weeks. He ran ahead of Martha in the mornings, his laughter echoing in the quiet streets. She found herself smiling more often, even though a part of her always remained watchful. The cowboy's guidance had transformed her perspective. She no longer felt powerless. She understood that her vigilance, combined with the cowboy's quiet protection, created a safety net strong enough to face the challenges that once seemed insurmountable. One afternoon after school, Danny ran toward Martha with a small bunch of wildflowers in his hands. "Look, Mom! I picked these for you," he exclaimed, his eyes shining with innocence and pride. Martha knelt down and took the flowers, smiling through tears that she quickly wiped away. "Thank you, Danny. They're beautiful," she said softly, holding him close. In that moment, she felt the weight of the past weeks ease slightly. The fear that had consumed her life was not gone entirely, but hope and love had begun to take its place. The cowboy continued to watch over them, always careful, never intrusive. Martha often saw him from a distance, leaning against a tree, riding slowly along the edge of town, or quietly observing from the hills. His presence was reassuring, a reminder that they were not alone in facing the dangers that life sometimes brought. Martha had come to trust him completely, not just because he had protected Danny, but because he had taught her how to protect herself, how to stay calm, and how to face the world with courage. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink, Martha decided to take a walk with Danny near the creek. The water sparkled in the fading light, and the air smelled faintly of earth and grass. Danny ran ahead, his laughter ringing across the field, and Martha followed more slowly, savoring the peace that seemed almost foreign after weeks of fear. The cowboy appeared quietly, as he often did, watching over them with calm eyes. He gave a small nod of acknowledgement, and Martha felt a deep sense of gratitude. "Martha," he said quietly, his voice calm and steady, "you've done well. Danny is safe because of your awareness, your courage, and your love. You have learned quickly, and you have grown stronger than you may realize." Martha felt a blush of pride. She had feared for weeks that she was weak, that she could not protect her child. But now, hearing his words, she realized that strength was not the absence of fear. It was acting in spite of it, learning from it, and using it to protect those you love. Danny came running back, holding a small frog he had found near the creek. "Look, Mom! I found him!" he shouted, holding it out for her to see. Martha laughed softly, her heart full. "That's wonderful, Danny. Let's watch him for a moment, then let him go back to the water," she said gently. She bent down with him, and together they watched the little frog hop back into the creek. It was a simple moment, but for Martha, it felt like a triumph. Life, even after fear, could still be filled with small joys and moments of wonder. As the days turned into weeks, the town of Willow Creek seemed to settle back into its quiet rhythm. The men who had once threatened Danny were no longer seen lingering near the school or the streets. It was as if they had understood that the child was protected, that their attempts at intimidation would not succeed. Martha felt a quiet satisfaction in this, not out of revenge, but from knowing that her family was safe and that her vigilance and courage had mattered. Martha continued to practice the lessons she had learned from the cowboy. She kept a careful eye on the streets, observed patterns, and taught Danny how to be aware of the world without being afraid of it. She knew that danger could appear in many forms, but she had learned how to face it with calm and preparation. The cowboy's guidance had been invaluable, but she realized that the true strength had always been within her. He had merely shown her how to access it. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the hills, Danny asked quietly, "Mom, why does he always watch us from so far away?" Martha smiled gently. "Because he wants to make sure we're safe, Danny. Sometimes people help in ways you don't see. It's like having a guardian who cares, even if he's quiet."
Danny nodded thoughtfully.
I like him, he said simply. Martha laughed softly, hugging him close. I like him too, she replied. The cowboy's presence remained a steady reassurance, but Martha noticed that she no longer felt dependent on it in the same way. She had learned to trust her instincts, to observe carefully, and to act with calm and courage. She could protect Danny not only with the help of others, but with the skills and confidence she had gained. The fear that had once controlled her life had transformed into careful awareness and readiness. As the weeks turned into months, Martha noticed subtle changes in herself. She was calmer, more confident, and more attentive. She approached daily challenges with clarity rather than panic, and she had learned to balance vigilance with the joys of life. Watching Danny grow, play, and laugh reminded her why all the effort, the lessons, and the preparation had been necessary. Every step she had taken, every plan she had made, had been for him. One afternoon, a neighbor approached Martha with a warm smile. Martha, she said, I've noticed how careful and confident you've become. Danny seems so happy, too. It's wonderful to see. Martha felt a quiet pride. She realized that the past weeks had not only kept Danny safe, but had also transformed her into a stronger, more capable mother. The challenges she had faced had tested her, but they had also revealed her resilience, courage, and ability to act with wisdom under pressure. That evening, as Martha and Danny prepared for bed, she reflected on everything that had happened. She thought about the fear, the tension, and the lessons she had learned. She thought about the cowboy, who had guided her, protected Danny, and taught her how to face challenges with calm and integrity. Most importantly, she thought about Danny, his laughter, his innocence, and the love that had driven her to act with courage every day. Martha realized that life would continue to bring challenges, but she now had the tools to face them. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. She had learned that protection was not about control, but about awareness, preparation, and careful action. And she had learned that love combined with courage and wisdom could create a safety net stronger than any fear. The next morning, Martha walked Danny to school as usual. The streets were calm, the air fresh with the scent of early morning, and the town seemed peaceful. Martha held Danny's hand tightly, but not with fear, rather with a quiet sense of confidence and love. She knew that no matter what challenges came their way, they could face them together. She knew that Danny would grow up safe, cared for, and prepared for the world, and that knowledge filled her with pride and peace. As she watched Danny run ahead to greet his friends, Martha felt a quiet smile spread across her face. The lessons of fear, vigilance, and courage had transformed her, and she knew that her bond with Danny, strengthened by love and experience, would guide them through life. And in the distance she saw the cowboy, leaning against a tree, watching over them quietly. A steady presence that had made all the difference. Martha raised her hand in a small wave, and he nodded in acknowledgement. No words were necessary. Their shared understanding and mutual respect spoke volumes. Life in Willow Creek continued, calm but aware, filled with small joys and careful vigilance. Martha had emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident, and Danny thrived under her care. The threats that once loomed over them had passed, leaving behind lessons of courage, preparation, and love. And while challenges would undoubtedly continue to appear in the future, Martha knew that together, she and Danny could face anything. The past weeks had tested them, but they had also revealed the depth of Martha's courage and the power of love, trust, and careful preparation.